Hey guys, if you want to buy a house right now in Las Vegas, but you're struggling to qualify for a mortgage, maybe because your credit score is too low or you don't have a down payment or maybe something else is going on, then this is the video for you. Today, I'm going to be teaching you all about rent-to-own homes, sometimes called lease option homes, how they work, and we're going to be talking about that all in the context of Las Vegas. Hey guys, welcome to the channel. My name's Tom. I help people move to Las Vegas, and I teach people what it's really like to live here in the Las Vegas area. So if that's of interest to you, make sure you go down below, hit subscribe, please thumbs up this video, and also click that little notification bell so you get notified every time I put out a new video. With that, guys, let's get right into talking about rent-to-own and lease option homes. It's the same term, or I guess it's different terms, means exactly the same thing here in Las Vegas and how all that works. I'm gonna put up everything we're gonna go over today on the screen, and with that, let's dive right into it. So the first thing we need to talk about is what is a lease option, what is a rent-to-own option on a home here in Las Vegas or really anywhere. So basically what it comes down to, these two terms are referencing a type of seller financing, which basically means that the seller is going to finance the loan on the property instead of the bank. So normally if you get a loan, say a conventional mortgage loan, the bank is going to give you money based on your credentials, your credit, your job, all that sort of stuff. You're going to use that money to pay the seller. And then you're going to pay the bank back or whoever you got the mortgage loan from. But in this scenario, you are still going to take ownership of that house for, X number of loan periods, but you are going to be paying towards the seller instead of paying for that house by paying towards the bank. And this is really important, guys. So conventional loans are really common. VA loans, FHA, there's all different types of mortgage loans that are very common in the marketplace. This lease-to-own and rent-to-own option of seller financing is a little less common, but it's still definitely possible to get. You just have to look a little bit closer, and we'll talk about that more in the rest of this video. I have some notes down here. So that's basically what a rent-to-own lease option is, right? It's some sort of seller financing where you pay the seller for the house over a period of time instead of paying back the bank for that house. Now, who might be interested in this type of loan or seller financing, and why would they be interested in it? So if you want to buy a house, but maybe your credit score is too low, you don't have a down payment, or some other factor that is keeping you from getting a loan on a house, or obviously you won't be able to pay if you can't pay cash, because otherwise you could pay cash on a house. So if you can't pay cash and you can't get a loan from a bank or some other type of mortgage institution, then that's why you'd be interested in this rent-to-own / lease option type of seller financing, because it allows you to get into a home, take possession of that home, and it'll be your home one day, but you don't have to go through the normal financing processes of like talking to a bank and that sort of thing. All right, with that, guys, let's talk about how rent-to-own works. So I get a lot of questions from clients, and there's a lot of misconceptions out there. So this is really going to clear a lot of those up. So first things first, guys, you are going to have, or generally you're going to have some kind of down payment up front to the seller. Now, what this down payment is called, it's not usually called a down payment, it's called an option fee essentially, because what you're doing when you get a rent-to-own or a lease option on a property, you're basically renting the house for a period of 2 to 5 years, depending on the contract. But what you are purchasing is an option to buy the house. And that option works like this. You give the seller, say, $1,000 to purchase that option. And what that option contract is going to say is that you have the right, the first right of refusal to buy that home within X period of time. So it could be, the day that the lease started and up until 5 years from now. You have the option to buy the house. And unless you say that you don't want to buy the house, or you default, or some other terms in the contract, then that seller will have to sell you that house for a predetermined price within that time period that the option applies to. So you have to have some amount of money up front, generally, unless you negotiate around it, to purchase that option, or sometimes it's called the first right of refusal, to purchase that first right of refusal from the seller of the property. After that happens, the contract mainly functions mostly like a lease. So you're going to have your options contract, and then you're going to have your lease contract, which is going to talk about, what you're going to pay on the house per month and where those payments are going to go. So of course you're going to have some kind of rent payment and utilities or whatever you work out the contract to be. That's not that important in the terms of this agreement, but what is important is any additional fees you have to pay every single month that are going to go towards, maybe paying for that option, or paying for the remainder of the option that you didn't pay off at the initial start of the contract, or maybe every single month you negotiated, hey, I want to put $200 down on the principal of this house every single month, so that at the end of, let's say, 10 year or however many period, let's say it's 10 years, 120 months, you have now paid $24,000 towards that house in $200 increments over that time period. So that's going to be a really important thing to negotiate for. But that's basically how it works. And then with any point within that time period up until the end of that options contract, you can what's called exercise that option to purchase the property, and then go through all the steps to purchase that property at whatever price or whatever equation, however you guys predetermined it in the options contract. However you predetermined what price you're going to pay when you exercise that. When you do exercise it, then you'll go through the process, get a title company, do all the normal things of buying a home here in Las Vegas. But you would just be buying that home that you exercise the option on. It's really important to note, guys, that that option fee that you pay at the beginning is usually non-refundable. So you're buying that option. Let's say you paid $1,000 to buy that option, or let's say, in this case, let's say you paid $10,000, because I think that's more realistic. Let's say you paid $10,000 to buy that option. At the end of let's say it was a 3-year options contract. At the end of that contract, if you do not want to buy the home, or maybe you can't qualify for mortgage, or you don't have the cash to buy the home, whatever the case may be, if you cannot exercise your option at the end of that contract, you will lose out on that money. So this is not something to be entered into lightly. If you think you won't have the money to buy the home, I definitely recommend just go get a rental or something like that and work on your credit while you're in that normal 1 year or 2 year rental contract, whatever you signed up for. But yeah, if you're putting money down in an options contract, that's generally non-refundable, so that the seller, is getting something for their time, because they're possibly passing up other offers on their home. So that options contract is just like, hey, I'm going to pay you to sit on this house, to not do anything with it, and to let me possibly buy it if I want to, or if I can qualify. So make sure you don't just think this is a get out of jail free card kind of thing, and you can lock up a house and it's not going to cost you anything, or you'll get your money back, because that's a non-refundable fee, and that's definitely something that surprises people, and it's a way you can get into trouble with these rent-to-own homes. Now let's talk about what you need to essentially get into a rent-to-home or lease option home. The first thing you're going to want to do, guys, is make sure you're talking to a realtor or some kind of real estate attorney, someone who can help you search for homes through the MLS. So more than likely, it's going to be a realtor. What you need to tell your realtor up front is that you're interested in this kind of property, because this kind of seller financing is actually pretty rare. So you want the realtor or your real estate agent, whoever, when they're searching through the MLS, they need to know up front that you want to do that, so that they can search for that specifically. It is definitely going to reduce the number of homes that are available for you to purchase, because a lot of sellers don't want to do this kind of agreement. But there usually are some options. It just depends on your area. I know there's a few options in Las Vegas right now at the moment. So if you want to take a look at those, if you have some interest, reach out to me or reach out to whoever your trusted real estate advisor is, and I'm sure that they can help you, take a look at those homes. But that is the first thing you got to do. Let your realtor know that you're interested, so that they can help you buy a property. And now we're just going to go through the rest of the things you're going to need to do to make sure that this contract goes well. Make sure that you're getting into it, by first doing all of your due diligence. So another thing you're going to want to do, make sure you get an appraisal on the house before you sign the options contract. You want to know that the house is worth a good amount of money up front, and that you're not getting into contract for something, say, for instance, say you're planning on agreeing to buy a home for $300,000 in 3 years. Get an appraisal on that home now, because the appraisal might come back and say, oh yeah, the house is worth $295,000 right now. So more than likely in 3 years, the house will be worth $300,000, or maybe it'll be worth more. So in that case, you're getting a good deal. But in the case of the appraisal comes back and says, well, it's really only worth $150,000 now. In 3 years, more than likely, that price of the home is not going to double. So if you're agreeing now to buy a $150,000 home in 3 years for $300,000, that's probably a bad deal, and you're probably not going to want to sign that paperwork. So that's why you definitely want to get an appraisal done on the house before you sign any kind of options contract. Another thing that you're going to want to do is talk to the lender or multiple lenders that you think you might use when you go to purchase the property a couple years from now. You want to tell them your plan and make sure that they have a good idea of whether or not you are actually going to qualify for a mortgage at the end of this period. Because if you enter into this contract and a couple years from now, you still can't qualify for a mortgage and you can't pay cash for the property, then you're going to lose out on that non-refundable options fee. So make sure everybody's okay and that they have a good understanding that you will qualify for a mortgage at the end of whatever the contract is. Next thing you're going to get, guys, is a home inspection. Again, before you sign any options contracts, get a home inspection. Sometimes these contracts do require the person renting the home, the person who owns the option contract, to make some kind of repairs or pay maybe 50% of repairs during that period of time, because the seller wants you to get invested in the home. They want you to start thinking of that home as yours so that you buy the house at some point in that contract. It doesn't do the buyer any good if some things start to go bad, or if you convince the seller to fix a bunch of stuff, because they might spend $20,000 fixing things and then you end up not buying the home. So it's pretty common for that sort of thing to be built into the contract, where the person who actually owns the option has to pay for repairs or upgrades or some portion of those things. So get a home inspection first to make sure there's nothing major wrong with the property. And that way you're not going to be renting a money pit or getting an option on a money pit that later on down the line is going to really screw you. Next thing you want to do, guys, is go over the HOA documents, the covenants and restrictions, all that sort of stuff, if your home is in an HOA. If the home you're renting is not in an HOA, then you don't have to worry about this, but you want to know upfront that the HOA is going to allow the kind of lifestyle that you want to live. Maybe you have an RV and you want to park it next to the house, or any number of things, guys. You want to put a pool in the backyard. You just want to make sure that the HOA is going to allow that sort of thing, so you don't end up buying a home that you can't actually live your best lifestyle in. Next thing on the list, guys, liens. This is going to happen later on down the line when you go to purchase the property, but up front, if you can contact a title agency or anyone who can do research to see if there are any liens on the property, tax liens, mechanics liens, any type of lien. Again, you want to do this early so that you don't enter into a contract and then later on when you go to purchase the home, you're like, oh man, this house has $50,000 worth of liens on it that I didn't know about. I either have to pay those off before I purchase the home, or I have to default and lose my contract. Or you're going to end up losing the house because of it. So that's definitely a possibility. So make sure there are no liens on the house or anything crazy like that before you sign the contract. Next thing, you're obviously going to need to supply your bank statements, employment records, and credit report to the seller. This is very similar to talking to the lender to make sure you're going to be able to qualify for a mortgage. But that seller also wants to know that they are going to be signing this contract with someone who actually will have the ability, or more than likely will have the ability, to purchase the home in the future. So if you aren't employed, or you don't provide your bank statements, your credit's really low, depending on what the seller has in mind as far as the candidate that they want to rent the house to, they might tell you no, they might tell you yes. It's all dependent on what the seller wants to do, who they want to rent to, because it is their house. And of course, you're not going through an institution for the financing, you're going through the seller. So definitely check on that. Provide every piece of documentation you can that says you are going to be able to buy this home, that you're going to be a good tenant, all that sort of stuff, because everything that is going to work in your favor, to actually get under contract with that house. So make sure you supply everything the seller asks for. Be very open about it. Of course, you're going to be renting the house, so it's also likely they're going to want first month's rent and a security deposit. And that's pretty standard for any rental here in Las Vegas, or really any rental across the country, is for them to ask for those things. So make sure you provide all of that stuff, guys, in the context of getting a lease to own or rent to own property. So that's about it, guys. We talked about what rent to own house is, why you might want to get one, how it all works. We talked about the non-refundable option fee, which you need to be careful about. Now let's talk about a few things you need to look out for, and maybe some pros and cons. One thing you need to look out for, and we kind of talked about this already, is a home that needs a lot of repairs. Again, the seller might require you to do a portion of the repairs, since he wants to get you vested in the home so that you start believing it, thinking of it as your house, so that you do end up buying it. So look out for a home that needs a lot of repairs, and that's why you get the home inspection. Next thing is going to be absurd option fees. So this could go a couple different ways. If it's a really low option fee, then say it's $1,000 on a $500,000 house. if you pay $1,000 up front and that $1,000 will then be applied to the principal value of the home when you go to purchase the home. So you pay $1,000 up front. On day one, you only have to pay $499,000 left to buy that home, right? By the end of the options period. If that's the case, you're going to have to come up with a lot of cash and or take out a pretty large mortgage and be able to purchase that property. So a really low options fee might not be best for you, but also a really high option fee is not great either, because if maybe the options fee is $25,000, $30,000, $50,000, whatever it is, guys, if it's really high, then you're kind of how do I say, chaining yourself to this house, because if you don't end up buying it, you're going to lose out on that entire options fee. So you don't want the option fee to be so high that you feel like you have to buy the house, but you don't want it to be so low that you feel like you won't be able to come up with the necessary funds to fill the gap between the fee and the actual price of the home that you agreed to by the end of the contract. You want to find some nice sweet spot where you'd be okay backing out, but you're also okay coming up with the cash to qualify for the rest of the down payment or however you want to buy the home. Next thing on the list, guys, short time frame. So if you're signing an options contract and it's only for a year or two or maybe even 3, if your credit is really bad, you have a lot of other bad debt, that might not be enough time for you to fix your credit. And that's why it's really important that you talk with a lender up front so that they can help you and really build you a plan about, this is how you're going to fix your credit, this is how you're going to pay down your debt, this is how you're going to do all the things that you need to do in order to qualify for a mortgage. If the time frame is too short, you won't have time to do that, and then you're going to have to lose that options fee that you paid up front and go into another contract at the end of the time period. And the last thing, guys, you want to look out for is not using a real estate attorney or a realtor. These options contracts can get very complicated depending on how the seller wants to write it and who's writing the contract. So you want someone working in your favor who is knowledgeable about these types of contracts, who understands the legal real estate system, and who will help make sure that you don't sign anything that is later going to screw you down the line when you go to purchase the home, or if you have to back out, or if there's repairs. So make sure you get a real estate attorney, get a realtor, whichever one. I kind of lean towards the real estate attorney because this is not a contract a lot of realtors work on a daily or weekly basis. So I would kind of lean towards real estate attorney. It might cost you a little bit of money, but I'd rather you spend the money up front on someone who's going to help you and make sure you don't get totally screwed in this deal than wait a couple years after signing something and then find out that maybe the deal you signed wasn't the best deal for you. Thanks so much for watching the video, guys. We talked about what this lease option is. We talked about why you might want to get one. We talked about how you can get it and the whole kind of process that goes into it. Talked about the options fee, and we talked about some pitfalls, some things to look out for. This is really good for people who have low credit score or have a lot of debt and need time to get rid of that to pay it off. But it might not be in your favor if you still don't have the funds up front for a down payment, or if you move often, if you don't have job security. All of these things could mean that you're going to have to end up defaulting on that contract, or not necessarily defaulting, but you won't exercise it, and then you're going to end up losing out on your options fee, which I don't want to see that happen to anybody. Guys, thank you so much for watching. If you have any more questions, comments, concerns, please feel free to reach out to me. All my information is down in the description. And with that, please stay tuned to the next video. It's been an absolute pleasure, guys. Thanks so much. Have a great day.